We gonna get it right. 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 You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and chief White House correspondent. I'm in touch, and so guess what? You have the good fortune of being in touch each and every day. Just go ahead and download the KBLA app and listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Also, be sure to subscribe. Not just to our KBLA YouTube channel, but also subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never, ever, ever miss an episode. With that, you know what time it is. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. But first things first, we're going to start with the dumpster fire of the day. ICE runs up on space constraints in mass deportation effort. That's what Newsweek is reporting. You see, while Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, has touted an increase in illegal immigrant arrests under President Trump, the agency reportedly still does not have enough space to hold the extra detainees, and has been releasing them back into their communities. So all this talk about rounding people up, all this talk about mass deportations, well, around 8,000 people have been arrested by immigration officers since Trump returned to the White House, a marked increase on daily averages under former President Joe Biden. However, NBC News reported that some have been let go under supervision orders. And a little bit later, we have a very special guest from CHIRLA that's going to help us understand why this matters and help us make sense out of all of this. Moving along in other news, the DC plane crash, are wondering where we stand with that. Officials have recovered all 67 people killed in that devastating collision. USA Today reporting that officials have recovered, again, all 67 victims in that devastating plane crash outside Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. As crews continue working to remove wreckage from the Potomac River, salvage efforts continued at the crash site on Tuesday as investigators made headway in their probe of the collision of an American Airlines plane and a U.S. Army Black Hawk. Officials also confirmed today that they have positively identified 66 of the 67 people. Videos showed cranes lifting large pieces of wreckage out of the river and placing them on a pair of U.S. Navy barges in the waterway near the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Crews were expected to recover the passenger jet's cockpit, though high wind gusts and tidal conditions could slow the operations, we're told. And so it's just sad news. And we don't need anybody politicizing what is already a devastating situation for the families of those victims, for the residents of Washington, D.C., for customers of American Airlines, as well as flight crews. So may they all rest in peace. But that is the latest related to that story. In other news, you know what President Trump said today? I mean, we try not to be gratuitous with sharing the latest coming out of that White House every single day, because we know that a lot of it is intended to create confusion. It's intended to exhaust people to the point where folks turn it off or turn away. And here on this show, we said, don't turn it off, don't turn away, keep a line of sight. And it's our job, we proudly accept this job, to keep an eye on things and to provide you with a digest of what you really might want to know, what we think might be important for you to know, what we think might be important for your family to know, what we believe is in alignment with our values here at KBLA Talk Radio. The New York Times is reporting that Trump is hosting Israel's leader, and he says that Gaza should not be rebuilt. This is where things stand. President Trump declared today that all Palestinians in Gaza, some 2 million people, should leave, describing a permanent relocation to one or more sites funded by countries of interest with humanitarian hearts. That's what he said. As he hosted Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for a joint news conference in the White House, Mr. Trump proposed that the United States take over the Gaza Strip. That's what he said. The Senate is set to vote this evening on Pam Bondi's confirmation as Attorney General for the country's top law enforcement job. But there are a lot of things coming out of the White House. This is important for you to hear, because all of us saw so many people that were in the streets protesting the conflict between Israel and Gaza. And I don't know about you, but in my drive here to the station, I didn't see any protest over this. And I'm checking social media to see where are the online protests around this. Because the same energy that people had before the election on this issue, I'm not seeing it, but I'm going to keep my eyes peeled, and you do the same. When we come forward, I'm really excited to be in conversation with Areli Hernandez. She is an immigrant Californian from Puebla, Mexico, and serves as the Director of Executive Affairs at the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, otherwise known as CHIRLA. There is so much swirling when it comes to the issue of mass deportation. We're going to separate the fact from the fiction when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 five-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at tra.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council. Hit me!
National News The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're streaming and listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and delighted to welcome to the show Areli Hernandez, the Director of Executive Affairs over at CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. Areli, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Quartelai. Thank you for the invitation. It's such an honor to be here with you all in this moment that is, I wish was but a better moment, but thank you for the invitation.
Well, and thank you for your leadership on this issue that impacts so many families in our communities. I think there are a lot of people, when they think about the issue of mass deportation, when they think about the folks that are impacted by this protracted, hyper-partisan fight on the immigration front, a lot of people think that it just impacts Mexicans. And yes, Mexicans are impacted, but it's so many more people from around the world that are impacted by this, no?
That's exactly right. Let me tell you a little bit about CHIRLA. CHIRLA was founded in 1986 to advance the human, civil, and labor rights of immigrants. In 1986 was when the last bill to provide legalization to immigrants in this country was passed. That's nearly 40 years ago. That is why there is such a big group of people. We estimate 11 million who are without immigration status in this country. And you're absolutely right. In this Black History Month, we cannot speak about immigration without speaking about Black migration as well. And we know that so many of these roots that folks are pushing back on are the roots of exclusion to communities overall. Right now, the topic is on immigrants, but what we say is immigrants are the first, but we will not be the last. And this breakdown of civil rights, of human rights that we're seeing that is targeted at immigrants is going to sound throughout all communities. So yes, immigration is very much seen as a Latina issue, many times very specifically Mexican, but Black migrants are also deeply affected by migration, and actually where deportations happen most commonly to Mexicans because of our nearness to the US, it's actually Black migrants who are the most detained. There is so much detention in the US right now related to immigration, and it is the Black migrants who are most deeply impacted by that detention. And so at CHIRLA, the C in CHIRLA stands for coalition. We do a lot of coalition work across the spectrum, and we work very closely with BAJI, Black Alliance for Just Migration, and also federally with UndocuMed, two of the leading organizations who are raising up their voice to talk about how migration is also an issue that deeply impacts Black migrants, and also API communities, and also everybody around the world, because the policies of the US are seen around the world and felt around the world.
No, you're absolutely right. And we've had Nana Gyamfi, the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, also known as BAJI. We've had her on the show to say exactly that. And I know that you all over the years have worked together in coalition with one another. And so for all the people that try to separate us and say, well, this is just a Mexican issue, right? Or Black people, don't have any support from brown people on this, right? That has not been the case when it comes to the work that I have witnessed and the work that I'm familiar with over the years between groups like CHIRLA and BAJI here in California and other places. And so, speaking of California, Fox News is reporting that Los Angeles leaders have introduced legislation to impede Trump's mass deportation. City leaders today introduced legislation to protect immigrant communities amid the unrest due to President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigrants. Councilman Hugo Soto Martinez introduced not one, not two, not three, not four, but five proposals aimed at strengthening labor and immigration protections, which he said would address renewed threats of mass deportation, worksite raids, and targeted enforcement actions. Areli, what is your response to this?
Our response is that this is what leadership looks like in this moment in this country. We need leaders across the board to stand up, but definitely elected leaders. There has been way too much silence from elected leaders when the attack from the right on immigrants has come. There's been too much silence. And this is a step forward. And the city of LA in December passed a sanctuary city ordinance. And we are so grateful for that passage. What does sanctuary city mean? It means that the city resources cannot be used to support immigration enforcement. That means that city employees, such as LAPD, cannot cooperate with ICE. There's a misconception. A lot of folks call CHIRLA's hotline and say, I heard that there's ICE activity on the corner of Pico and Union. Why, if we're a sanctuary city? Well, because ICE can still operate in the city. It just means that the city employees will not cooperate, but they still keep working. That's why the most important thing is for folks out there to know their rights. When folks in the community are informed about their rights, they have the power to stand up for themselves. And those rights are the right to remain silent and the right to ask for warrants, the right to not just give up themselves and their information or that of their families. We have been doing tons of work to inform people of their rights. A million laws can pass, but if the community is not aware of those laws and not enforcing their rights through those laws, we're already a step back. So number one, informing the community of their rights. We're so glad for these proposals that are moving through, and we are going to welcome them and work alongside to make them succeed. But our responsibility is to assure that the community knows those rights too. And I'm glad that you brought up labor, because that is one of the huge components that we have been working with. We work with our labor partners here in LA. LA is a labor town, and we have been working with them to assure that they too are informing their members about their rights. When it comes to immigration, there's so many things that people find easy to give information over out of fear. And we are here to remind them, no, there are laws that your employer has to follow when it comes to you and your immigration status.
And so, speaking of laws that employers have to follow, clearly, LA is still in the very beginning stages. The city of LA and LA County in the very beginning stages of recovering from one of the worst wildfires we have ever had in the history of our state. And there are a lot of people that are saying that, Trump's mass deportation efforts are ill-timed, particularly in places like LA City and LA County, where there are a number of undocumented folks in our community that we really need to help us rebuild quickly from the devastation. What say you about the impact of these mass deportation efforts on the rebuild effort that is just daunting right now, the more you think about it here in LA?
There was so much misinformation during the wildfires. And one of those things, if folks are not familiar, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Agency, lives under the Department of Homeland Security. So at the time that the wildfires were happening in LA, we saw a lot of FEMA and DHS trucks in LA County, and our community was frightened. That, coupled with real enforcement that was happening, and we have the videos on social media, on public media, about enforcement that was happening in the Central Valley. First of all, there was a tradition and there was an actual memo from DHS that said that if there was a natural disaster, there would be no enforcement from immigration happening. That has been rescinded. And that is horrible. And I want to tell you where that comes from. That actually comes from Katrina, where during Hurricane Katrina, there was enforcement happening on immigrant communities in the South. And it was horrifying. That is not what people should be thinking about in that moment. And in the time of the wildfires, many folks are looking at Palisades. And they are not looking at Altadena, Pasadena, where our communities are living and also employed. So many of these folks are super heartbroken to witness the loss of their homes. And when they are witnessing the loss of their homes, our working class communities and low income communities have witnessed the loss of their employment. And they, because of their undocumented status, are fully unincluded in any of the relief, federal relief, state relief, some limited relief. And so we have set up an iRelief that we had from COVID, where we're supporting folks in their effort to get back up as they find jobs or whatnot, but that's difficult. The second piece of that is that we know that immigrant labor is part of all efforts that are to revitalize any zone. We saw it in 9/11. It was immigrant labor who went in to support in the cleanup. We saw it in Katrina. It was immigrant labor. We know that immigrant labor is going to be what helps us through these fires. That is why it's so vital that we also support the efforts of our mayor, that it is a common sense effort to do it in an orderly fashion so that all of this labor that is going to go into the wildfire areas is safe and physically well and healthy. Because we know that many times folks are hired, but healthcare is not available to them in the near time or the far time. Those are all the things we're looking at. And we know that immigrants and our communities are part of this economy and part of the city. And of course, they will be part of the relief that comes.
And speaking of the relief, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass recently announced that she was appointing Steve Soboroff to serve as the Chief Recovery Officer for the city of Los Angeles to kick off the city's massive rebuild and recovery effort, which was initiated by her emergency executive order earlier that week. I've got to ask you and the leadership over at CHIRLA, are you working with Mr. Soboroff? Are you all looking to work with Soboroff to make sure that as plans for this massive undertaking, this rebuild effort, following the LA fires, that it is that we are rebuilding in a way that is compassionate, that we are rebuilding in a way that is consistent with our espoused values around LA City being the sanctuary city that communities so desperately need in this hour.
Yeah, it is across the board that we are working with our elected officials, from the mayor to also our governor, to raise this point. And one of the really important things to mention too, it's that it's the city of LA, but also LA County overall. The county was impacted. When we saw the smoke from the wildfires, it was our community in South LA who was receiving that toxic smoke because of the way that the earth was moving. So it's not just about specific LA City, it's all over. San Gabriel Valley. We have an office out in San Bernardino who also felt the impact of the fires through the air quality. So this is something that we are working across the board with folks to get the word out that our immigrant communities have to be a part of this recovery and that their well-being has to be a part of the response that we have. And it's especially important that we remember Altadena, Pasadena. They're
right.
outside the city of LA. And they have a variety of different representatives. So it's always so important for me to bring them in and to remember that we talk about LA County overall, not just the city of LA, because they too have to be remembered. And just the amount of community that is out there that is sustaining and living off of the roots that they came here to escape from other places, and they have to have that ability to also be able to remain where they have chosen and not be moved out. We've been part of that advocacy. We continue to do it through many of our coalition partners out in Pasadena, Altadena, and across LA County and across California, raising that voice, reminding folks that folks have a right to remain in their home. And the number one thing that everyone is telling folks is do not sell right away. Do as much as you can to preserve what is yours. Do not sell right away, and look for help, look for support, look to organizations that can guide you, because man, this that's happening is a true natural disaster.
When we come forward, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and get your hot take on Trump's plan to invoke this obscure 18th century wartime law in his bid for mass deportation. I want to get your thoughts on that. Plus, Trump's border czar has said, quote, if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. We're going to make sure that each and every one of you know your rights. When we come forward, you're listening to and streaming The More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 58.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The Department of Education is investigating anti-Semitism at 5 universities following President Trump's order to address campus harassment. Schools under review include Columbia, Northwestern, Portland State, UC Berkeley, and the University of Minnesota. The Los Angeles City Council is considering new protections for undocumented immigrants, including workplace reporting of federal raids and funding for legal aid. This follows Black Mayor Karen Bass's sanctuary city law amid President Trump's planned deportation efforts. Marcus Jordan, son of Michael Jordan, was arrested Monday in Florida for cocaine possession and resisting an officer. Police say he drove off from a traffic stop before being found parked on railroad tracks. And today marks Rosa Parks' birthday. In 1955, she refused to give up her bus seat to a white man, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott and cementing her role in the civil rights movement. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
A crash in Westminster, 405 northbound before Westminster Boulevard. Fast track lanes affected. Northbound delays backing up all the way from the 55 freeway. Also, the southbound side, it's looking pretty good. A little crowded ahead in Irvine. Away from Culver Drive, pretty crowded ahead to Sand Canyon. And it's also slow moving out of Agora Hills. This is the 101 southbound Liberty Canyon Road. You're on and off the brakes to the 170, 134 split. More slowing in Hollywood. Sunset Boulevard into downtown Los Angeles. Monrovia, 210 eastbound, just past Myrtle. A wreck in the third lane from the left, being cleared off to the side, but big delays out of Pasadena, getting away from Mountain.
If you were self-employed or a 1099 contractor and missed work because you had COVID or cared for an immediate family member with COVID in 2021, you may qualify for up to $32,000 for the Sick and Family Leave Credit. Visit taxcreditnow.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers introduced Luka Doncic to the LA media Tuesday morning at their training facility in El Segundo. The 5-time first-team All-NBA selection admitted he was initially disappointed that the Dallas Mavericks traded him, but he said it's a dream come true to play with LeBron James. Doncic said LeBron was his idol while growing up in Slovenia. The Lakers were in New York when LeBron learned of the trade late Saturday night. He called the 25-year-old Doncic that night to welcome him to the Lakers family. A strained calf muscle has kept Doncic off the court since Christmas Day. He will not play tonight against the Clippers or Thursday against Golden State. Doncic will participate in a 5-on-5 scrimmage in Wednesday's practice. If Doncic has no setbacks from the scrimmage, he could be ready to make his Lakers debut in Saturday's home game against Indiana. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a dream today.
From the inventors who transformed our world to the activists who changed our nation, their stories shaped America. This February, KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates Black History Month with powerful conversations, untold stories, and voices that need to be heard. Join us all month long for special programming that honors the past while inspiring our future. Black History Month on KBLA Talk 1580. Our history, our voices, our time. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's cal-cruise-news.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. She's Areli Hernandez, the Director of Executive Affairs over at CHIRLA. And if you don't know about CHIRLA, just go online to chirla.org. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. Go to chirla.org. Go to chirla.org to tap in and donate and support. I mean, there's a lot happening in our communities across the country. There are a lot of people who are scared. There are a lot of people who don't have, a lot of resources to be investing in an immigration attorney, for example. And so, Areli, tell us, what does CHIRLA offer? And what tips, tools, and resources do you want to make sure people walk away with? Are there any phone numbers that people should save in their phone in the event that someone in their in their family that may have a mixed immigration status, or someone in their neighborhood may need some support?
Yes, there are so many resources. First of all, let me tell you that we have so many departments here at CHIRLA. Rapid Response Community Ed is the one that we're speaking of, but there are many more membership services. We, with the state of California, with the county of LA, are a legal service provider for all types of legal services. And folks can go on the website, find the phone number, and get connected so that their family can find relief. And we also provide a lot of direct services, a lot of information for the community, from emergency preparedness up to financial literacy. So all types of services. We are most known for mobilization. We organize people, and we organize people in coalition, in just fellowship with our other movement partners across LA, for those who are seeking just progress for our community. We are part of those movements to connect. What CHIRLA is hosting right now, has always hosted for many administrations, but has reactivated, is something called the RAIDS Rapid Response Network, or the Rapid Response Network. And what that is you call our hotline if you see ICE activity, and the hotline will send somebody out there, a first responder, to confirm, to verify. And if there was activity, then they will take action. Either they'll engage legal attorneys, or they'll try to help the family find their loved one. So folks can call that number if they witness ICE activity. Now, I'm going to be very specific with folks, okay? We get a lot of phone calls, and a lot of them are folks saying, I saw on social media, or a TikTok influencer said. What we're asking you as community members is, if you are the first person to see it, they are on your street and you're watching them knock on doors, or you're driving and you see that it's ICE and they have the uniform, and you take a picture and you can say, it was at this time, this intersection, and this is what they were wearing. That is what we're asking you to report to us. And so the number you call is 888-624-4752. 888-624-4752. What we tell our community,
and this number is for who?
It's our hotline. It's our CHIRLA hotline. That is a number where you can report ICE activity, but overall, anyone in the community can use that number to connect to CHIRLA for resources. We might not be the organization that has the resource to you, but we'll point you in the way of an organization that we work with that has that resource, from housing to any other type of resource that folks in the community are looking for. That is the hotline that folks can call here at our CHIRLA office. We tell our community it is about power, not fear. As long as our community is informed about what their power is and their rights, they have a lot of power within them. So it's 888-624-4752. That's the number that folks can call. I want to also tell you that there is a lot of misinformation out there and disinformation, and it is purposeful. A lot of folks saying a lot of things, and our community is scared and they are confused. And this is just on the topic of immigration. There are many other topics that are coming, being changed by the federal administration, that are going to require our community to have information. So here at CHIRLA, we have a Know Your Rights clinic every Wednesday at 2:00, where folks from the community can come get any information about how to know their rights as immigrants. And the three things we tell people is, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to talk to folks when they approach you. Okay. And I'm telling people, like, don't talk to strangers. Okay. One of the things we've heard is folks on the street going up to someone in a uniform and saying, what is your name? When were you born? And I'm going, don't talk to strangers. That's not something you should be telling strangers. So the right to remain silent, the right to ask for a warrant. We have done great work to educate our community about what it looks like to request a warrant if they come knocking to your house. And don't open the door, whether you're in your car, whether you're at work, whether you are at home. Don't open the door. Don't give them access without a signed warrant by a judge. And number 3 is, you have the right to an attorney. You can ask for an attorney, and you do not have to sign or agree to anything without an attorney being present for you.
I mean, what's so great about the advice that you just offered up, not only is that great advice for folks who may be undocumented, or folks who may be living in a household that has mixed immigration status, but that's just great advice in general when interacting with law enforcement. And so one of the big takeaways, I hope, for folks who are listening here is that whether you are documented or undocumented, you still have rights.
That's right.
You know, there are forces out there that want you to think that if you're undocumented, that you have no rights. In fact, you have the new White House press secretary who was referring to undocumented folks as illegals, was referring to undocumented folks as criminals, which is incorrect, because you can't be a criminal if you haven't had due process, and if there hasn't been a judgment that has said you have been convicted of a crime. People don't get to accuse you and call you a criminal, right? And so these are all very, very, very important things to know. In our remaining minutes with you, Areli, I wanted to get your take on Trump's plan to invoke this obscure 18th century wartime law in a bid for mass deportation. he is really setting to test the limits of his immigration crackdown by invoking a wartime law to deport immigrants alleged to be gang members without court hearings, a broad authority that could supercharge his mass deportation push to potentially sweep in people not charged with crimes. What's your take on that?
I'm going to tell you that everything that folks said that will never happen is happening in this time. So we cannot say that will never happen. The Alien Enemies Act was invoked before here in the US, and it was during World War II. And that is what led to Japanese Americans being taken to internment camps. The history of East LA would be very different today if the Japanese had been allowed to remain in their homes in East LA. But they weren't. They were removed from many places in the nation and taken to internment camps under this law. That is frightening, considering that we are hearing that Guantanamo is now being opened for migrants to be held. It is completely frightening. That is one of them. The second one that we should be paying tons of attention to is the White House reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment. Let us remember that the 14th Amendment comes after Reconstruction. It is one of the Reconstruction amendments, and it comes from the belief that people are equal and that they have the equal access to citizenship right if they are born here. The 14th Amendment was established to assure that no person born in the U.S. is born as a second-class citizen, much less into slavery. A reinterpretation of that amendment is a pulling back of everything that was so hard fought for during the Civil War. That is what we have to really focus in on and not allow it. And I will remind folks that an executive order does not undo a constitutional amendment. That is why we have to really watch it. We have to raise up. We have to fight back, because it is about immigrants now, but immigrants will not be the last. Immigrants are just the first. Everything that is being done will impact all of our communities, and it will have harsh effects on our communities. These are really severe things that we're talking about. And people before the election would tell us that's never going to happen. We are seeing now in these days that things that were said will never happen are happening, and we are raising the alarms about it, and we're watching it.
Areli, in our remaining minute, I would be, I would be remiss if I didn't mention to our leaders, learners, and listeners that you came to the United States as a child to reunite with your parents and your younger brother. You first became aware of your immigration status during the 1990s, when, for those of us that are native Californians, we remember Proposition 187, how that was in the news. And an elementary school teacher publicly inquired about your immigration status. And so a combined fear of INS detentions, of witnessing mass discrimination, and some of the work shortages that led the family to permanently relocate to California's Central Coast and then LA County. This work is not just a job for you. This is deeply personal to you. In our remaining minute, talk to us about how you are balancing the personal impact of this work with operating professionally and strategically to keep as many people out of harm's way.
It is a difficult balance. And I want to tell you that at CHIRLA, we are a leadership that is personally and deeply impacted. We're immigrant leadership, and 99% of our staff is immigrant or child of immigrant. This work is deeply personal to all of us. And it is work that we know is for the right cause. And it is work that we take on because somebody did this work before us so that our families could live the life that they live. And we do it thinking of the future generations. And so I, in one of my many roles at CHIRLA, am tasked with reminding our staff to take care of themselves. And so we keep connecting them. And what we connected them to in these last 2 weeks is Audre Lorde reminding us that joy is resistance, and that we have to keep fighting to have that joy, to spend time with our families, to spend time with our loved ones, because that is who we do this work for the future, for our families, for our generations. And it's a very difficult balance with so many in the community looking to us and so many partners in the community also coming to us. But we have built a strong network, a strong coalition of folks that are ready to stand up. And I, from this place, can tell you that many times it feels difficult, but I think of the other little girls like me who are being questioned and who don't have anyone that they think that they can confide in, or don't have anyone that they think they can go to for resources. And there's many people that are adults that are that little child still, because fear is trying to grasp them. So thinking of that is what helps me move forward, and a lot of deep breathing, a lot of self-care, and a lot of moments of pausing, and really just trying to find that joy, reconnecting and remembering that being stripped of joy is what they're trying to do, to rip us of our humanity, and we're not going to let it happen.
That's right. And trying to rip us apart from our communities. I have said on this show and very often that I think the way that we get to the other side of whatever this is in community. It's in community. You don't have to do it alone. And for those that are streaming, you can see right there on your screen, you can call the CHIRLA hotline to report any ICE activity. You can also reach out if you just have any questions. They will route you to the right team at CHIRLA or refer you to the right folks outside of CHIRLA. But you just call 1-888-624-4752. As the son of an immigrant, as the brother of an immigrant, this issue is not something that's out there, and it's not just about our brothers and sisters and siblings that may reside on the other side of the southern border, right? It impacts us all.
That's right.
That's why we intend to continue to keep our eye on this issue and to connect people with tips, tools, and resources to keep you and your family safe and to protect our communities and to uphold the rule of law. That's what we're about here. And so my thanks to Areli Hernandez, who is the Director of Executive Affairs at the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, otherwise known as CHIRLA. Thanks for joining us, and please come back again soon.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, the quiet part out loud when we come forward.
Bar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go, shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
I've just been feeling so sluggish lately. You should try the Metamucil 2-week challenge. The Metamucil 2-week challenge? Yeah, Metamucil 4-in-1 fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Start your daily routine now, and in 2 weeks, you could be feeling great. Well, it's been 2 weeks. How you feeling? Lighter and feeling great.
If you want to feel lighter by promoting digestive health, sign up to take the 2-week challenge at Metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I lack a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/ultraadults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and it's about that time. It's time for the quiet part out loud. We're trying to walk a balance between providing you, our leaders, learners, and listeners, with critical information that we think you need to know. And, we certainly don't want to be gratuitous in sharing the latest news coming out of Washington, D.C., coming out of the White House, where there's obviously a lot of chaos. And they were being flooded with news and information, a lot of which we can't use because we don't know what to do. And so we don't want to enable any sort of paralysis, but we also don't want to be a bottleneck for information. And so it's a delicate balance. And so if we ever feel off balance, hop in the group chat on YouTube and let us know. Because we're in this together. This is our community of leaders, learners, and listeners. Folks are in afternoon drive time tapping in. And so we want to provide you with your digest, but we don't want to do too much. And so we're going to depend on you to make sure we're walking that balance. So in that spirit, this next story, I think anybody who has a student loan or anybody who might be applying for a student loan, you may want to listen up. Key functions of the Education Department, which Trump is moving to dismantle. The Washington Post is reporting that the Trump administration is hoping to drastically shrink the Education Department using an executive order that's now in the works. The order, as described by 3 people who've been briefed on its contents, they said that it would seek a plan for Congress to abolish the department altogether, which would fulfill a Trump campaign promise. But this order would follow a trio of executive orders that President Trump signed last week, seeking to control how schools teach about race and gender, direct more tax dollars to private schools, no surprise there, and deport foreign pro-Palestinian protesters. All these moves are happening ahead of the confirmation of Trump's nominee for education, Secretary Linda McMahon, which has not been scheduled yet. Now, I think one of the obvious questions that folks might have is, well, what does this mean about student loans? What does this mean for student loans? If you get rid of the education department, does that mean people don't got to pay their student loans anymore? Well, according to the Washington Post, the education department runs the $1.6 trillion student loan program, its single biggest mission. Theoretically, the federal government could drastically reduce the department's role in student borrowing, but more likely, another governmental or quasi-governmental agency would take on the responsibility if the education department were eliminated. You know what that means to me? It means privatizing student loans. And so think about it. You know, you have a lot of folks on the right that for years have been doing their darndest to privatize public education. There are a lot of people out there that want to just privatize student loans, right? If you have a private loan and a federal student loan, I know I'm not alone in this, then you know that there's a big difference between the two. Your private loans probably have a higher interest rate than your federal loans. Your private loans probably have less flexibility in terms of repaying your loans. Remember that income-driven repayment program? Well, you know, that doesn't really seem to be that much of a standard when it comes to private loans. And so let's get this straight. There were a number of folks that went to the polls on November 5th to elect Donald Trump to a second term under the idea that he was going to bring down the cost in the lives of everyday Americans. The cost of eggs, cost of bacon, cost of gasoline, cost of energy, cost of everything. What cost has gone down thus far? The Waffle House just added a surcharge on eggs. And if Trump succeeds in dismantling the education department, your student loans may very well be privatized. I don't think that's going to make them any cheaper, but we shall see. When we come forward in our next hour, I'll be joined with Greg Mathis Jr. And Elliot Cooper. You don't want to miss that. You're listening to a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We got more for you in afternoon drive time when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with UW News. At least 20,000 federal employees have accepted President Trump's buyout offer, with more expected by the February 6th deadline. The move aims to shrink the workforce ahead of return to office requirements. The cockpit and tail of the American Airlines plane from last week's D.C. mid-air collision were recovered from the Potomac. The crash with an Army Black Hawk helicopter killed 67 people, with 55 victims